My name is Stacy. I used to live with my parents, brother, and his wife at our family home. But a few months ago, my parents died in an accident. It's been quite busy ever since, but recently the situation has calmed down. I currently live with my brother and his wife Vanessa. She has a quite distinctive personality. I work from home, and except for necessary meetings outside, I am almost always at home. As a result, my sister-in-law considers me unemployed and often makes sarcastic remarks. Stacy, shall I help you find a job? You need to work hard. You can't live here forever. I am working, right? Drying at home and playing around is not what I call work. How about a nighttime job like mine? It pays well. Since you were a shut-in and not good with customer service, maybe you'd prefer working in the kitchen? The truth is, I work as an illustrator from home, but my sister-in-law perceives it as me just staying home and playing. Vanessa's family runs a fishing business and she has always helped out, so she values active jobs. Some people work physically while others work using computers. She doesn't seem to understand this difference, so she tends to view me as not working because I don't go out. When my parents were alive, they used to explain my job to Vanessa, but after she complained to my brother, he also started to be strict with me along with her. One day, after Vanessa returned from her part-time job, during dinner, my brother said, "Vanessa says that you aren't actually working and just playing around on the computer all day. Vanessa continues to work even after getting married, but you, on the contrary, despite not being married, are taking it easy. Are you sure you're fine with that?" My brother actually understands my profession. Yet, he sides with Vanessa and has started to criticize me for being lazy. What are you talking about? Why do I have to be told such things? When I argued back and returned to my room, my brother followed and said, "The conversation isn't over. Vanessa is angry because she thinks our financial burden is increasing because you're not working. We're saving money, right? I understand that my brother and his wife are living at our family home to save money for economic reasons. It seems Vanessa consulted with my parents, and that's how we started to live together. I heard my brother say he wanted to save as much money as possible before having children. After our parents died, I intended to ask my brother and his wife to leave the house, but my brother promised to reconsider his actions and asked to continue living together, so I agreed. Although my brother's behavior hasn't changed much, I thought it would be bearable for a while. Our house was newly built a few years ago and is quite comfortable, but it was costly. Since my parents did not have a group credit life insurance, the mortgage remained. I have taken on the mortgage payments, which are a significant burden to me, but I was planning to share the payments if we were to continue living together. However, dividing the mortgage in half would slow down my brother and his wife's savings, so I continue to pay it all by myself. I understand that. But what does my being here have to do with your inability to save money? Well, Vanessa said that. She said our food and electricity bills increase because you're here. I actually pay Vanessa my part of the living expenses. In fact, I buy my meals and do my laundry myself. It seemed that my brother did not fully understand what I was saying. Wait, Vanessa said she wasn't getting any financial help from you. But if you are making payments, why are our savings increasing? I don't know. You should ask Vanessa about that directly. There seemed to be things about their financial situation that my brother didn't understand, but I had no say in that. After hearing my words, my brother seemed to go and ask his wife about the money matters. Hey, don't make unnecessary comments when you're unemployed, okay? Yesterday, Ben asked me about the savings, and he also asked whether you were giving me money. Just because you're helping out a little doesn't mean you're paying for living expenses. So don't say that, okay? I haven't said anything, but it's true that I'm paying you. Why would I have to hide that from Ben? Be quiet. Ben said you told him to ask me about the savings. I managed to dodge the question, but from now on, don't talk to Ben about money matters. Why don't you mind your own business instead of other people's? With that, Vanessa left for her part-time job. I had been thinking about why Vanessa didn't want to talk about money with me, but until then, I hadn't paid much attention to it. However, from that day on, I started to feel something was off with her behavior. Especially when it came to money, she became more nervous, increased her sarcastic remarks towards me, and started to push me to move out. Hey, since you're unemployed, you don't have the funds to move out, right? How about becoming independent soon? It's your fault our financial situation is tight. I don't plan to move out, but why is that my responsibility? I'm paying you my part of the living expenses. What? You still don't understand why you have to leave? That's why you're called an ignorant bum. Up until now, Ben and I have been lenient, but we've reached our limit. You have to leave within 3 months. After saying that, Vanessa returned to her room in a huff. Hearing Vanessa's words gave me the impression that Ben had taken over the house. I wondered if Vanessa knew that I had inherited the house and decided to confirm with Ben. Hey, Vanessa knows this house is mine, right? For some reason, she's telling me to leave. Yeah, we discussed that. Vanessa really likes this house. It's big enough even if we have children, and it's a nice house. So, like Vanessa suggested, if you're willing to leave, we can continue living here. If that's what you guys want, I'll comply. But the house is in my name, so if you're going to take it over, I want you to buy it officially. Also, would you be able to continue paying the mortgage? After thinking it over, Ben replied, yeah, that's impossible. We need to save up money quickly and get our own place. I was actually shocked when I asked Vanessa about our savings before, and there wasn't much. She said she was saving, but I couldn't believe it. When I checked the account, there was indeed very little, and I wondered if there was another account where she was saving. Despite me bearing the full cost of the house's mortgage and maintenance, my brother and his wife's savings were not increasing. Their only expenses are their own meals. Considering Vanessa's past actions, I suspected that she might be spending money without Ben's knowledge. This could be why their savings aren't growing. But I was upset that Vanessa was blaming me for the lack of savings, so I decided to uncover her secret. First, I observed Vanessa's clothing, but there were no signs of expensive brand items, so shopping didn't seem to be the cause. I thought about Vanessa's behavior from various angles, but couldn't find an obvious reason. After several days passed without finding any particular clue, one night, I was at a cafe for a work-related meeting. I witnessed a woman who looked very much like Vanessa walking with a flashy man outside the window. When I secretly followed them, they entered a high-end store that looked like a nightclub. The next day, after my brother went to work, I decided to ask Vanessa about it. Last night, I thought I saw you near the station. Weren't you with a man? Vanessa, slightly disturbed by my question, replied, you sure you didn't mistake me for someone else? I was working yesterday and hurriedly left the scene. I thought I might have mistaken her with someone else, but I was sure it was her because she had the same bag. Since I had another meeting that night at the same cafe, I was able to spot a woman who looked like Vanessa walking hand in hand with the flashy man at the same time as the previous day. I gathered my courage and decided to approach Vanessa. Vanessa, weren't you supposed to be at work today? Vanessa, noticing me, quickly withdrew her hand and said, oh, Stacy, I just came to have a meal with a friend today. The man, unconcerned with Vanessa's reaction, handed me his business card and said, I'm Justin. Please come and visit our club. While I gave a vague response and took his card, I looked at Vanessa. Vanessa, looking pale, told the man, we're going home now. Really? But you said you'd order champagne today. The man said, I'll be going home now. With that, Vanessa left me behind and hurried away. It became clear from the man's words that she was spending a significant amount at the nightclub. And yet she had been complaining to my brother that I was hindering their savings, so I decided to tell him everything and hurried home, resolved to have Vanessa leave the house. When I arrived, only Vanessa was there, and upon seeing me, she started to yell at me. If you tell Ben about this, I won't overlook it. You get to stay in this house because of us. We're supporting an unemployed person like you. I hadn't expected my brother to be absent, but it was a good time to confront her since I had things to ask. Vanessa still labeled me as unemployed and insisted I was living off them, so I boldly asked her, Vanessa, Do you by any chance think this house belongs to my brother? What are you talking about? Ben inherited it from your parents, so of course, this house is his. Do you think you have the right to live here as a family member? Vanessa countered my statement, showing no belief in my words. This made me feel that Vanessa still didn't understand that I had inherited the house. This house was actually passed down to me from our parents. Since there was remaining mortgage debt, and my brother's income alone was not enough to repay it, I took it over. That can't be. We aren't repaying any mortgage. I have taken over the mortgage and am paying it in full. Moreover, I am also covering the necessary expenses for maintaining the house. Vanessa doubted my words, starting to accuse me of being a liar. While we were arguing, my brother returned from work. Is there a problem? I could hear voices from the entrance, and the neighbors were concerned. With my brother's arrival, Vanessa seemed to feel she had gained support and confidently said to me, "Ben, explain. This house was inherited by you, and Stacy, who is unemployed, should leave." My brother grasped the situation and spoke to Vanessa. "Don't you remember? We couldn't continue to pay the mortgage and live off our income alone, so it was decided that Stacy would take over the house. Have you forgotten a promise we made to live here until we're financially stable?" I don't remember any promises like that. Despite my brother's explanation, Vanessa continued to claim she didn't remember. My patience reached its limit, and while showing her the property register, I confronted Vanessa. "Please look at this. My name is listed as the owner, isn't it? Vanessa, the only thing you are allowed to do is to live here. Why do you think you have the right to kick me out?" No, I genuinely didn't know. If you had shown me the property register from the start, I won't say things like that anymore. I'd be at a loss if I were driven out now. Vanessa tried to salvage the situation, but I didn't listen to her and continued. "You've been going to nightclubs and running out of money, right? Are you using the living expenses I provided for the nightclub? Even yesterday, you were about to order champagne. If you continue to live like this, you won't be able to save up money." I vented all my frustrations at Vanessa. Vanessa glared at me, looking like she might pounce at any moment. But my brother grabbed her and started to question her. "What did my sister mean when she said you've been going to nightclubs? Is that why we haven't been able to save up any money? You were supposed to be at your part-time job yesterday." No. My brother had assumed Vanessa was going out at night for her part-time job and was shocked to learn she had actually been going to a nightclub. The shock my brother must have felt must have been even greater than mine when I accidentally discovered her secret. Confused by my brother's reaction, Vanessa boldly retorted, "I was just relieving stress at the nightclub. It's not like I was cheating or doing anything wrong, right?" While going to a nightclub might not be considered cheating, I had witnessed Vanessa going out with a host twice, feeling her spending was adversely affecting our household. I had been patient with this short-term situation, but given Vanessa's management of finances, it seemed unlikely they would leave this house on their own. I therefore decided to stop holding back and resolved to have my brother and his wife move out. If Vanessa had to rent an apartment by herself, she might start thinking more seriously about her spending. "Vanessa, you and Ben should move out of this house. It's because you've been living here without much financial burden that you've been able to afford expenses like things like going to the nightclub. You should find a new place within a month. Moving will cost money, but you surely have some savings." I expected my brother to agree with this proposal, but he made an unexpected statement. "I agree that we should leave this house. However, Vanessa and I will live separately. I no longer want her managing my salary, and I don't need a wife who meets other men. Stacy, I'm sorry for the trouble we've caused. We won't wait a month. We'll leave this house immediately." My brother's statement clearly indicated he was considering distancing himself from Vanessa. Realizing this, Vanessa panicked and appealed, "Wait, are we getting a divorce? It's impossible to move out so soon." But my brother did not side with her like he had before. Despite her surprise, Vanessa showed resignation. Then, "Wait until my next payday. I only have a few $100s now, and I can't go anywhere. How surprising that you only have a few $100s left 2 days after payday. How much did you spend in such a short time? My brother was appalled by Vanessa's statement and seemed at a loss for words. I spent it on the nightclub payments. Oh, and I don't mind getting a divorce before payday. If we get a divorce, there will be distribution of property, right? Ben, how much did you inherit? Vanessa seemed unaware that the inheritance was not subject to distribution of property. My brother interrupted as I was about to explain. It was a considerable amount. But first, let's file for divorce tomorrow, and then we can discuss. Believing the inheritance would be divided, Vanessa was busy preparing to move away with joy. The next day, my brother and Vanessa submitted the divorce papers, and Vanessa quickly decided on a new place to live. The initial costs were partly covered by my brother's savings. Vanessa had the moving preparations and contractors arranged within a few days, and the loading had begun. When the distribution of property came up, my brother clarified the inheritance is not subject to division. Our joint savings and Vanessa's moving expenses are what you'll be getting. Vanessa's face changed rapidly from cheerful to furious, and she confronted my brother. That's not what you said. I rented that expensive apartment thinking I'd get a large sum. Plus, I've already told Justin I'd go to the club tonight because I thought I'd have a lot of money. Vanessa still intended to go to the nightclub. In response, my brother coldly replied, I did mention the amount of the inheritance, but I never said it would go to you. Seems like the movers have finished their job, so you should go to your new place quickly. Vanessa was making a scene, but neither my brother nor I were swayed, and we made her leave the house. When she continued to cause a commotion outside, I told her we would call the police, and she finally quieted down and left with the movers for her new place. After calming down, I proposed to my brother, who was preparing to move. I plan to sell this house. If you don't mind, you can stay here until I find a buyer. You'll need moving funds, right? I need to find a new place too. Tears filled my brother's eyes as he expressed his gratitude. 2 months later, we found a buyer for the house, and we each moved to new places. The house sold for more than the remaining mortgage, so I used the funds to buy a small condominium. The new place is far from the old one, but close to a station, and I like it. On the other hand, Vanessa was evicted for failing to pay her rent after moving and incurred debt due to continued expenses at the nightclub. I don't know where she is living now. My brother is a bit worried about Vanessa and is willing to help if she reaches out, but there has been no contact so far. My brother and I occasionally keep in touch and deepen our relationship by visiting our parents' graves together. I hope to continue visiting our parents' graves with my brother. Ideally, I'd love to someday report my marriage at our parents' grave, but that will have to wait. My name is Jane. I am currently fulfilling my role as a professional while simultaneously raising my beloved only son, Paul. I have a long history of work experience and never intended to give up my career, even after getting married. Especially in my small but independent company, I have never faced a situation where my salary was reduced even after returning to work post-childbirth. During the leave I took for my son's childcare, I entrusted the management of the company to someone I trust, so I never worried about the management or progress of the business. However, the only issue that troubles me amidst my peaceful days is entirely different. It involves the presence of my mother-in-law. My husband Danny, our son Paul, and I lived together in a comfortable house. But soon after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law suddenly imposed herself into our home. I assumed she would return to her own home after a short stay, but she chose to continue living with us without showing any intention to leave. When I gently inquired, "How long do you plan to stay with us?" her reaction was unexpected. She became emotional and exclaimed, "How could a heartless daughter-in-law attempt to drive out an old woman like me? After losing my beloved husband, being forced to live alone in my hometown is incredibly cruel." Danny, who had overheard part of the conversation, rushed to her side and comforted her. "Mom, it's okay. I would never kick you out, so please don't cry." After she calmed down, Danny took her to a different room. Once we were alone, he looked at me sharply and accused, "How can you say such horrible things to my mother? Do you not have a heart?" Misunderstandings might have arisen because Danny did not hear the whole conversation, but I had not forbidden my mother-in-law from living with us. As I explained, I was just asking how long you plan to stay, not that I wanted her to leave. He retorted, "Asking about the stay sounds like you want her to leave early. Can't you understand other people's feelings?" I regret using inappropriate words, but I never intended to drive her out. However, Danny, taking my mother-in-law's excessive reaction at face value, seemed to have decided I was in the wrong. I had no choice but to leave the situation as it was, making my daily life's small troubles deepen due to complex family relationships and the nuances of emotions involved. As a business owner, mother, and wife, I juggle these roles daily, trying to balance each. I wonder how long my mother-in-law plans to stay in our home. Asking her directly would likely result in her accusingly crying and appealing to Danny, so I hesitate to ask directly. Yet, when I contemplated how long she might stay, she unexpectedly announced, "I've sold my old house, so I'm moving all my belongings here," in front of the moving company truck parked outside our home, leaving me speechless. It was my day off, and I had planned to take Paul to the amusement park. However, Danny approached my mother-in-law, suggesting, "Then, today will be for sorting things out." This visit to the amusement park was a promise made long ago, eagerly anticipated by Paul, who looked disappointed when he asked, "Mom, what about the amusement park?" "Don't worry, Paul. As promised, we're going to the amusement park," I reassured him. Danny frowned and showed his dissatisfaction, asking, "Are you planning to leave the luggage unattended just for going to the amusement park?" I confidently argued, "Why should we change our plan for a family visit to the amusement park, breaking a promise to our child for sorting luggage?" I find such behavior unacceptable. The visit to the amusement park had been planned weeks in advance, with all preparations made for that day. Yet, I was not informed about the move, and when told today was the day for unpacking, I prioritized the plans already set. Nevertheless, my mother-in-law began to cry exaggeratedly, claiming Jane finds living with me uncomfortable. That's why she prioritizes her child over me. Hearing this, the movers, either feeling the situation was deadlocked or tired of my mother-in-law's exaggerated performance, quietly pointed out, "Unpacking can wait. Shouldn't promises to children take priority? And did you properly inform your wife about the move?" Upon hearing the calm comment, my mother-in-law blushed and felt ashamed. Danny, witnessing this development, did not defend her but merely looked at me intently. It appeared that Danny prioritized helping his mother with the move over our planned enjoyable family visit to the amusement park. In light of this situation, I decided to take my son, Paul, to the amusement park as previously planned. Unfortunately, this choice created a noticeable distance between my husband and me. One day, my mother-in-law said to me, "Jane, would you mind staying at home on your next day off?" I asked her why. "The truth is, I want to spend time with Paul, but since you always monopolize him, I hardly get the chance to play with him," she complained. This request came about a week after she had moved into our house without permission. She probably overheard my plans to take Paul to the shopping mall on my next day off. Suddenly, she forbade me from visiting the shopping mall, asserting, "Danny, Paul, and I will go to the shopping mall, so you should stay at home." Normally, there would be an option for the whole family to go out together, but excluding me seemed very selfish. Having witnessed her previous fake crying and such behavior, I could no longer trust her words. Therefore, considering it unthinkable to leave my child with someone I couldn't trust, I suggested, "Why don't we all go out together?" Although she looked displeased, she could not directly accuse me of being mean and reluctantly agreed. At the shopping mall, I began selecting clothes for Paul as originally planned, choosing slightly larger sizes considering children's rapid growth. My mother-in-law interrupted, "Why can't you choose the right size? This is the perfect size for Paul, bringing a size that fits him right now. Even when I explained, children grow fast, she argued. When he grows, we can just buy new clothes. There's no need to save so much. I was dumbfounded by her short-sightedness. Selecting perfectly fitting clothes and buying new ones every time they become small is clearly a waste of money. We didn't have the financial leeway to spend money in such a way at our house. When I hesitated to purchase, Danny appeared and pointed out, I support the family financially. If you try to save, it makes me look stingy to others. Eventually, Danny covered the shopping expenses for my mother-in-law. Paul wore his new clothes comfortably for a while but soon complained, these clothes are too tight now, and stopped wearing the clothes chosen by my mother-in-law. She seemed to have mixed feelings about this change. Out of necessity, I passed the outgrown clothes to a colleague's mother I had befriended at the daycare. This act was well received, making me feel happy. However, the existence of the daycare seemed undesirable to my mother-in-law. Why do you need to leave Paul with others when I'm here? Moreover, continuing to work with a child is not good for their education, she criticized. I couldn't agree with this point, responding, the reality is, we can't make ends meet without my job, but she just snorted. How much do you even earn? I'm confident Danny's earnings surpass that. We can manage without your help. Besides, you're probably a burden at work anyway. It seemed possible that Danny hadn't told his mother about my role as a business owner. His occasional bragging nature might have led him to hide such an important fact, perhaps to avoid letting his mother know that his wife earns more than he does. Faced with such a situation, I was deeply disappointed. Actually, I earn more than Danny, I explained calmly yet firmly. My mother-in-law's response turned to anger. How can you say such a thing? Looking down on your own husband and boldly declaring you earn more. Do you not respect your husband? You neglect your duties at home and boast about out-earning him. Don't you have any respect for him? Danny can manage perfectly fine without you, she exclaimed furiously. As her anger reached its peak and her voice echoed throughout the room, Danny appeared, asking, what's going on here? As if she had found reinforcements, my mother-in-law spoke with renewed vigor. Hey, Danny. Actually, we wouldn't be troubled without Jane, right? It should just be you, me, and Paul living happily together. Don't you think our life is being constrained because Jane is here? She said. What? Yeah, Danny hesitantly, but eventually, showed his agreement. Then, the best thing to do is to divorce. She continued, and shockingly, she immediately took out a divorce form. It seemed she had wanted our divorce for some time. I no longer had any expectations for a father who prioritizes his mother over his child. However, I had no intention of giving up custody of my child. It seems my presence is entirely unwelcome. If you wish for a family of 3, then I shall leave this house, I responded calmly. And without hesitation, I signed the divorce form she proposed. Despite forcing me to cancel our amusement park plans and insisting on helping with the packing, as soon as I started preparing to move out, she took Danny on a trip. Though she invited Paul to a trip, he had seen her unpleasant behavior towards me and still resented her for nearly causing us to miss our amusement park trip. He chose to stay with me, declining her invitation. Thus, Danny and she ended up going on a trip alone. I took this opportunity to move mine and Paul's belongings to a new home. I also left a letter stating that the responsibility for future rent payments, custody, and property division would be Danny's, as outlined through a lawyer. Returning from a week-long trip, Danny and his mother, unaware of the situation, contacted me surprisingly quickly. Jane, why did you take Paul with you? Mom is worried. I'm supposed to have custody, aren't I? He accused. It became clear at that moment that Danny had not yet read the letter I left. Please read the letter on the living room table, I said. Danny replied, oh, Mom said she would look at it first. I've outlined that you'll be taking on $4,000 rent responsibility, that I will not transfer Paul's custody. and that we'll discuss property division through a lawyer, I explained. Rent is $4,000, he exclaimed in surprise. He knew the housing was rented and that I had been making the payments, but he was unaware of the specific amount. I couldn't believe he was unaware of the rent amount while managing our finances. Indeed, this house was a rental, costing a hefty $4,000 monthly, and initially, I was against living here. However, Danny was adamant about living in this house, and eventually, we rented it according to his wishes. As a president, you should have no problem with this level of rent, right? He said, leaving the burden to me. As a result, I ended up paying $4,000 rent monthly, with Danny covering other living expenses. However, he was careless with money and prone to spending impulsively. There was an instance at the shopping mall where, after shopping without calculating, my mother-in-law ended up short at the register and reluctantly called me for help. It seems this mother and son lack financial management skills, often spending on personal luxuries before covering living expenses. I had to cover the shortfall each time. I had savings for Paul's future and was putting my entire salary into our household, leaving me with very little personal spending money. Recently, I also had to cover the expenses and pocket money for his mother, putting us in a financially tight situation. But with the divorce finalized, I am relieved from the burden of $4,000 monthly rent. Registering the house under his name, which was done for his vanity, turned out to be fortunate. This allows me to withdraw from the financial carelessness of the two, bringing significant mental relief. There's no way I can pay that amount. You've always been paying, continue doing so, he pleaded. Why should I pay the rent for a house I no longer live in? I was driven out by your mother. The divorce is finalized, and there's no longer any connection between me and that house. Therefore, I have no obligation to pay the rent, I counted. So, please help me, Denny begged pathetically, but then it seemed his mother grabbed his phone, and her voice came through. We can pay the rent without you. Even the amount you claim to have been paying is manageable for Danny, she asserted. With a take-home pay of only $2,000, how do you plan to pay the monthly rent of $4,000? Are you going to use magic? That would be remarkable, I said sarcastically. What? Came the reply. It seemed that my mother-in-law genuinely misunderstood Danny to be financially well off, probably because she saw him paying during their shopping trips, leading her to believe he was wealthy. I was just dumbfounded by this fact. I thought it was impossible for Danny, with his take-home pay of $2,000 and almost no savings, to afford the rent. Moreover, expecting them to raise a child healthily in their financially unstable situation would be difficult. Even without Paul's consent, custody would naturally fall to me, as Danny and my mother-in-law couldn't provide a suitable environment for raising a child. So, what should we do then? They were bewildered. If you can't pay the rent, you have no choice but to change your living situation. You'll have to notify the real estate agent to cancel your lease. The longer you delay, the more you low in rent, I urged them to act swiftly. My words were met with, "Shut up. I know that much," from my mother-in-law, who clearly had no room for fake tears in this situation. After hanging up, I completed the move to a new apartment with Paul. This apartment is close to my workplace and conveniently located near shops and medical facilities. About a month after the divorce, my mother-in-law and Denny showed up at my company. They began loudly demanding to see me at the entrance, as reported by the receptionist. I was out having lunch with Paul at the time but hurried back with him upon hearing they were causing a commotion. Fortunately, there's a daycare within the company, so I could bring Paul inside. Seeing my mother-in-law and Danny waiting at the reception was a surprise. I was puzzled by their visit since the lawyer had reported they hadn't responded to our discussions. Jane, can't you just come back home? We understand you were making the payments. Please stop being stubborn, my mother-in-law pleaded with tears, thinking her act would work on someone other than her son. She clearly intended to paint me as the villain. Witnessing her behavior, Danny joined in. What do you mean by getting a lawyer involved? This is a family matter. Surely, Paul would prefer his parents to be together. However, a father who chooses his mother over his son would only sadden the child. I sighed and replied, now that we're divorced and essentially strangers, please communicate through my legal representative for anything. Danny, realizing he wouldn't get through to me directly, turned to Paul with my mother-in-law. Hey, Paul, you want to be with your dad and grandma, right? Aren't you lonely when your mom is always busy with work? Frightened by their words, Paul hid behind me and cried out loudly, I hate you both because you're mean. His crying had a more significant impact on the people around than my mother-in-law's fake tears. Soon after, other employees came and escorted Danny and my mother-in-law outside, to my relief. Later, after notifying them through the lawyer that any further company visits or following us would be reported to the police, they quieted down. Subsequently, Danny and my mother-in-law abandoned their $4,000 a month housing for a dilapidated apartment. Danny's fate took a darker turn as he had previously bragged about living in a luxurious home beyond our means at his workplace. Fearing the revelation of their move to a rundown apartment, he quit his job without consulting his mother, leading to her fury upon discovering his sudden job resignation. As a result, they started working to earn an income, frequently blaming each other for abandoning me and Paul, resulting in constant arguments. Despite this, they are trying to make ends meet, sending child support monthly while working hard. Meanwhile, my business is thriving, and despite the absence of his father, Paul is growing up to be a well-rounded boy. Even without an unfit father, I am determined to raise him well.